The fireplace is nice.
Sometimes it helps to like unplug it and replug it in once the TV.
Very probably do. Right. Well, the hand is set up there.
My name is Keondra Prier. I am the current president of the Reservoir Hill Association, and tonight we are tasked with trying to go over the concerns that we have with the B&P Tunnel Project so that we can share it with the Amtrak project team, so that we can begin a dialogue about how to move forward with community engagement. And I will be doing that work with Barbara Borland, who is the acting president of the Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association, and Mark Perry, a neighbor. Okay. So I just want to begin today by saying we're going to be spending a lot of time thinking about the year 2175, which seems very far off. But if you think of the last tunnel, it has lasted us 150 years. So we'd like to prompt Amtrak to really think about the next 150 years and how they can support our community in embracing a tunnel that will support the future of Reservoir Hill well into the future. So as I stand here today, doing some reflecting on the history of our community, I can't help but recall that 100 years ago, I would not be able to be standing here today if it wasn't for the forethought of my ancestors and the work of my community to ensure the desegregation of this neighborhood. So, with that, I would like all of us to reflect on the things that people have done to create the world that we live in today, and think about the gifts that we all have received in order to have the future that we have now. And I think about that, and I think one of the greatest gifts that anyone can have is the planning of past generations. It's one of those gifts that you can never really pay back, but only pay forward. And so I hope that we can think that way as we think through this presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to take you through the last 100 years here in Reservoir Hill, and pretty much share with you why the connection between our transportation history and our health, and segregation are so intertwined, and why that has to be centered in how we think about the future of the planning of the B&P Tunnel Project. So again, the question that we're really thinking through is beyond capacity, because we hear a lot from Amtrak about why we need to build the capacity of the train system of the future, why it's so important for freight to be able to carry more freight along the trains. But I ask you to think about this. How confident are you that you're planning for another 150 years of infrastructure, not only for today, but for tomorrow and for the entirety of our community? So for those who are joining us online and in person, you can join as a participant as we go through some of these questions on Slido. If you've never used Slido before, you can point your cell phone camera up, and it will allow you to capture that QR code. It'll send you right to the website. If that is too funky for you and you're not into QR codes, you can go straight to slido.com and enter the code 4108058, and it will allow you to participate. And there's a couple questions already prompted for you on the screen. If you have a burning question and you're afraid that you might forget it, you can also go to the question and answer section and enter a question right there if you're in person or online. Also, if you're in person and you're totally not into tech, you can wait till the end and ask any questions if you might have this. And I will continue. So again, today's agenda is about 21. We're thinking 2175, right? So we're going to go through our history. Then we're going to talk about our homes. We'll go into the environment and the climate. We'll talk about emergency preparedness. And then we'll end for our community's plan for advocacy. So I'm going to start here. This is a really famous map. And it really points to the fact that Baltimore City has been strategically underdeveloped by the local, state, and federal government. It only was possible through their cooperation together. And as you can see, there is a C5 section. That's our neighborhood, and it used to be called Mount Royal. So that, in 1937, when this map was made, that was the name of our community. And we were rated as third grade. And the reason why our community was rated third grade, if you go into the map, is that it was called, it was deemed encroaching by the Negro. It was also deemed that because it was a majority Jewish neighborhood. So our government decided that mortgages and loans should not be distributed in our community equitably because of that fact. But that's not where it began. It really began a lot earlier. I'm going to start in 1910 because we're not going to go, way back. I like to start with the work of someone you've probably heard before, George McMecken. George McMecken, and you've heard the street before, was a Harvard-educated African-American man who moved to Baltimore and was determined to move to McCullough. At that time, McCullough Street was whites only. And that created a huge infighting in the community. His buildings, stones were thrown through his windows, and he went through a great deal of stress with his family and pressure to move out of the community. But instead, he took the issue of the law that was established in the city that said only black people could only live where majority black people lived, and white people could only live among majority whites. And he actually was successful in 1917 in overturning that city ordinance. Again, it's because of the work of people before us that we're even here today in this room on Utah Place. In 1920, that opened up the door for the establishment of Sugar Hill. That included Druid Avenue, Madison Avenue, and McCullough Street. And that was where the most well-established black folk in Baltimore were able to live. In 1938, Mount Royal then was deemed definitely declining because of the movement of that population into Sugar Hill. In 1940, as we see a lot of the white population move into the suburbs, black families were able to purchase more homes west of Fulton. In 1948, then they began to dismantle the streetcar system that allowed those families to enter the suburbs and across the city. Druid and McCullough are then turned into thoroughfares for suburbanites to move in and out of the city by car. In 1959, I-83 is constructed to further divide the community from the white community to the east. And then in 1968, we have the Baltimore riots post the assassination of Martin Luther King. The U.S. National Guard is called in, and we lose a lot of buildings on Whitelock Street in this neighborhood. In 1972, an urban renewal plan was created, which was jokingly called the way to move Negroes out by one of our most established writers. And in 1994, Whitelock Street corridor was leveled by Baltimore City. And that's why a lot of our commercial buildings on Whitelock no longer exist. In 2005, there was a lawsuit on housing discrimination against HUD that was successful. In 2017, DOT was sued for discrimination by the red line. At that same time, the B&P Tunnel route was selected, and it should be noted that the route that was chosen avoids all predominantly white communities. So this is an image of what was, in 1950, considered Mount Royal, and then the after, when it was divided. And you can really see the difference between how invested this is North Avenue, the shops, people out shopping, the types of shops that are on the street, and then after 1968. And again, you can see the same on Whitelock. Whitelock, and this is the image of the National Guard being called in. Then it's being abandoned into the 80s, and then 2010, we no longer have any shops along that corridor. And just to be clear, it was very, very well articulated that the goals of segregation were something that communities work towards. Here, we have a letter to the Jewish Morning Journal by Jefferson D. Norris, who is the secretary of the Mount Royal Improvement Association, who says, the main object of the association is the preservation of Mount Royal District for white occupancy. And that is how communities colluded to keep Black folks out and the city divided. And so, just bringing us back to our conversation in November, when I pointed out why it was so problematic that Upper Utah-Madison Neighborhood Association wasn't included in the Section 106, this is what I'm talking about. When you only speak to Mount Royal and Golden Hill, you're furthering the work that was established almost 100 years ago. So what I ask us all to do now is one, of course, reconsider the alignment. So it doesn't build upon historically racist patterns of collusion between federal, state, and local governments to disproportionately impact Black communities in Baltimore City. I ask you to communicate in a different way, to create an outreach and communication plan that takes into consideration the history of Baltimore City communities, historic power imbalances in decision-making, in order to plan for a different future. And then I ask you also, please, to reduce harm, to understand the impact of leveling the historic buildings on West North Avenue and its contribution to resource apartheid, and find alternatives to the continuation of disinvestment in our communities.
Keondra, thank you so much. That was a really complete intro. And I hope that this, I know not all of you are from Baltimore or Maryland, and not all of you live in the DC region. So I hope that that was helpful to you, to give you some context about what it means to live here and how we choose to be with each other. I'm going to talk a little bit about our actual homes. I'm pedantic. So yeah, good evening, and thank you so much, Amtrak team, for being here. We really appreciate it. And thank you to all the neighbors who came out. My name is Barbara Borland. I've lived in Reservoir Hill for 10 years. We moved here for my husband's job, and I feel so lucky to live here. I've lived on what has been known as 3B, preferred alternative, selected alternative, final alternative, and now the alignment for the past decade. And so the project does travel directly under our homes. So I've just been clued into this in a very personal way from the beginning. I'm the president of the Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association, which is a nonprofit, all-volunteer DIY neighborhood association originally incorporated in 1999 on the east side of Reservoir Hill. I'm also a commuter because I'm a novelist, and my U.S. publishers are in New York. They are not here. so I have to take the train, and I take the Northeast Corridor Amtrak enough that I'm also a member of the National Association of Rail Passengers, NARP. And so, I'd like to open our presentation with a quote on homes, with a quote from our current president, Joseph Robinette Biden. He was referring to the existing B&P Tunnel when he said this. The B&P Tunnel is now, I think as everyone knows, it's 151 years old. It was completed during the height of Reconstruction when Ulysses S. Grant was president, and it's been in operation continuously since then. And like Grant and Lincoln's version of the Republican Party, the B&P Tunnel has not aged well. It's been variously described in the media as decrepit, ancient, unsafe, a flood risk, built on sand and shifting in place. It is, according to Amtrak's own documents, suffering from irreparable age-related issues, or in the typically blunt style of President Biden, who said in a 2023 speech in front of the tunnel, "The structure is deteriorating, the roof is leaking, the floor is sinking, this is the United States of America, for God's sake, we know better." And hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent to maintain the tunnel against excessive amounts of water leaking into the tunnel walls, flowing under the floor, falling bricks and concrete, portions of the wall collapsing, cement sinking. $71 million was spent in 2020 to replace portions of track. And I know that the Amtrak team knows this, but just to reiterate to this room that that's not enough, right? But the tunnel is not the only thing that is 150 years old. Our homes are 150 years old. Mine is a little bit younger, it's 141 years old, but she's on the fresher side. The homes of Reservoir Hill that are located on the alignment were built between 1792 and 1900. So that makes them anywhere between 232 and 124 years old. And many of these houses are townhouses. It was then and it continues to be an efficient way to build, and efficient for builders, efficient for homeowners. It captures energy, and it has us share resources. Our homes are connected. Our exterior walls are interconnected using what's colloquially known as a party wall. If a party wall, if you go up into your attic in many of our homes, you can see into your neighbor's house. They did stop doing that at some point because it does allow fire to spread quite rapidly. They're designed, our homes share everything. They share brick walls, they share chimney flues, they share water lines and gas lines. This is urban living. We're designed to depend on each other. Oh my God, sorry, I think I just wheeled it. Apologies. I'm too tall for this, or I don't know what anyway, we all depend on each other physically. That's how our neighborhood works. That's why we're so close. That's why when you talk to one of us, we all talk to each other. And I know that over the years, Reservoir Hill has been described as having too many associations, but really it's just, we all do communicate with each other. We're all in touch with each other all the time. And we don't have one single voice, because we're not a company, we're just people who live here. This is true of most of the blocks in our neighborhood that the alignment runs under, right? You've got all of these houses that are connected to each other, so anything that happens to one happens to the next. And the original mortar used to construct our homes was made from sand and lime. And there's no law that requires that our masonry foundations or brickwork has to be fortified. It's really just the market. What will a mortgage bear? That's the one qualifier that forces the structural change into our homes. But you can buy any pile of bricks with cash, right? So people don't have to. Some of my immediate next door neighbor, I think, bought his home for a very small amount of cash about 40 years ago, and his maintenance is intermittent because he's not required to. There's no code that requires him to do that. There's no city structure that helps us to do it. So homeowners, and this is true not just here, but in most places, we budget for repairs when we can afford them. When we can afford materials, labor, that means we avoid periods of inflation, high interest rates, construction material shortages. We do things as we can. So things are inconsistent. Even though we're interdependent, we're not all working with the same kind of structural integrity. So we rely on each other, and we have to communicate about that. And we didn't have a 2020 budget of $71 million to shore up our houses. There's tax credits available. Maybe you guys know about this. There are historic tax credits available in this neighborhood, but they are, as a person who's received one, I can tell you that they are explicitly designed to privilege people who have maybe applied for a grant before, if you don't have the time to follow every rule, check every box, and even call your state senator to get it approved, which I had to do, thank you, Senator Hayes, then you're not going to get it. It's not available to you. The support here is limited. And this is just to say that our homes are as old as the tunnel, and they're so much more fragile than they appear. So a typical Reservoir Hill home is made of brick, and it's built on sand. And these are pictures of someone's foundation. We had a neighbor on the alignment who had to re-pour his foundation. So this is it. This is what the bottom of our homes look like. It's brick and it's sand. There's no additional bedrock. There's no additional stones. And so, I joked to the engineers here that I'm going to invite you to a dinner party in our basements. But this is what they look like. Now you are out of that. You don't have to deal with that. And the mortar is also made of sand. The mortar was originally made of sand and lime, and the lime has of course leached out, and at this point it is really just powder. You can blow on it and it just disappears. So the reason that I'm saying all of this is because the real estate team here has communicated that they want to secure the subsurface rights to our homes in perpetuity, right? You want to buy those rights outright forever. And the problem for us, of course, is that our homes are fragile. And there's no amount of money that makes it worth it to have our homes be damaged in any way. The amount of money that you can offer us is limited, of course, by the ground rent set up here in Baltimore, which is a 19th century leaseholder scheme. So that sets kind of a low market, but it's not about the money. It's genuinely about what is referred to in eminent domain law as severance damages. So when you sever one part of the property from another, as you would do if we were to sell you the rights to take the ground underneath our homes, there are damages that result from that severance. Those damages would be not just from construction, but from ongoing operations. And I know that the engineers have thought about this because you build tunnels. I know you have thought about this a lot, and you thought about the effect of ongoing operations. And I appreciate the verbal assurances that you've made about how the construction process will shore up our homes if needed. But the thing is, verbal assurances aren't enough. What you're asking for from us, you're asking for it in writing, and you're asking for it forever. Any kind of decision that's made about my home doesn't just affect me or my nieces and nephews who would inherit it. It would affect anyone who would live in my neighborhood forever, in our neighborhood. And so the concern, especially given, there's a liability slide here, so I'm going a little bit over, but we don't, Amtrak's liability for damages is limited, and I know that that's a federal tort that limits it, but none of us want to have damages. We don't want to sue a railroad. We don't want to go after an insurance company. We really just want to make sure that you're able to come into our homes and see what there is to even make an agreement about before you ask us to sign anything. So, 150 years from now, I will be 190 years old. And my house will be 291 years old, and we will both look amazing, obviously, but that's only if we're really taken care of. We work so hard to take care of our homes. We really do, and our homes don't look like that tunnel. They're not falling apart. This is a beautiful neighborhood, and we do what we have to do to make our homes livable for ourselves and for our neighbors, but we don't do the work that we need to do to make it something that can support regional infrastructure. We can't bear that weight, but we're being asked to do that, and what we ask is that you do that in partnership with us. That before you offer to buy something, that you come and look at it. When people care about their environments, they look like this environment, and when they don't care, it looks like the original B&P tunnel. So my home is not decrepit, and it's not broken, and it's not leaking, it's beautiful. And so we expect the team that's here today to work to meet our standards. That's what we're asking. You want us to support the whole Northeast Corridor, and we want you to rise up and meet us where we are. This is I went a little, I'm not speaking instead of managing my slides, but really, we want to talk about structural reinforcement. We want to talk about minimizing vibration. We want you to see this as the challenge that it really is. It's an engineering problem, and I think it's one that can be resolved, but it needs forethought, not afterthought. And I think that's it. That's going to bring us to our next presenter. Thank you for listening to that. Our next presenter is another neighbor on the alignment, Mark Berry. He's an epidemiologist. He's worked in public health. He's an amazing presenter. He's going to talk to you a little bit about the environment and our concerns about public health. So please welcome Mark.
All right, good evening. Thank you to the HMR, TA, and RHA for organizing tonight's event. And thank you, Mr. Rosa, and the Amtrak program team for being here tonight. We appreciate you being here to listen.
Oh, if they're reconnected, yeah. Just reconnected, yeah.
My name is Mark Berry. I'm an epidemiologist who works in public health for 15 years and positions at the CDC, Johns Hopkins University, and the University of California, San Francisco. I live on Reservoir Street with my wife, who's also an epidemiologist and Hopkins alum. We've been in Reservoir Hill since about 2012. We're raising our 2 children in this beautiful neighborhood. And I'm here to speak to you today about the environmental issues that affect the health of our community. For me, this project has a clear problem and is an outdated environmental study. Amtrak's environmental studies were conducted in 2015 and 2016. These studies do not and could not account for the record-setting climate-driven changes in our environment in the last 7 years. Climate-driven disasters in the United States can be measured quantitatively. From 2016 to 2023, the U.S. has sustained approximately $1.15 trillion in damage from extreme weather events, or nearly half of the total economic losses on record since NOAA began calculating climate-related damages in 1980. Simply put, the effects of extreme heat, uncontrollable wildfires, and devastating floods have increased threefold over the past 7 years. Rail infrastructure, which can be washed out by floods, warped by heat, or shifted by changes in soil, is particularly vulnerable to climate-driven shifts in our community. The impact of the rail on the built environment is a physical problem, one that results from the contact between brake pads, train wheels, and railways. The data on climate projections that was available in 2015 for this project's EIS is very different from what we have today. This is not the fault of any person, any company, or any country. It's simply a changing circumstance, but it's an important one. To explain it further, we've solicited the expert testimony of a climate scientist. We've got written copies of his testimony as well, and Robert will hand these out. I'll let him introduce himself.
Good evening, Reservoir Hill, and hello to Mr. Rosa and the Amtrak project.
Well, I'll pass this written testimony out and hopefully it'll load. I think it's...
Team for the rebuilding of the B&P Tunnel. My name is David Cantor. I'm an associate professor of environmental studies at New York University and chair of the International Nitrogen Initiative, which is the world's leading network of scientists and stakeholders working towards more sustainable nitrogen management. My background's in chemistry and law, and I have a PhD in environmental science and policy from Princeton University. As a scientist who lives in New York and works with institutions up and down the coast, I'm a frequent commuter on Amtrak's Northeast Corridor. This project in particular has deep personal importance for me because I love Baltimore, and Reservoir Hill specifically. Dear friends of mine live here, and I've seen firsthand how wonderful this community is. It's incredibly special. As an environmental expert, I want to emphasize the importance of accounting for climate impacts and infrastructure planning, of which rail is an important component. The best data that we have available comes from the National Climate Assessments, a series of US government reports generated through a congressionally mandated partnership of 15 federal member agencies, including the Department of Transportation, which oversees the Federal Railroad Administration, source of this project's funding. The 5th National Climate Assessment, or NCA 5, was released in November of 2023, so it's quite recent. NCA 5 states that the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events are projected to increase dramatically in a warming world. If current trends continue, then by 2050, the average number of very hot days, or days above 95 degrees Fahrenheit, in the US is expected to double, going from a current average of 15 to 30. And by 2100 or the end of the century, that number will range from 50 to 90 days, depending on latitude, meaning that effectively every single summer day in Baltimore may be over 95 degrees Fahrenheit. That will, of course, increase inside Baltimore City's urban heat islands, where temperatures are consistently 10 degrees higher to approximately 105 degrees. As we saw this week, the Northeast is also highly vulnerable to extreme precipitation. NCA 5, which again was generated through the cooperation of 15 federal agencies and authored by nearly 500 scientists, asserts that major coastal flooding events per year in the United States are expected to increase from a current level of near zero to a minimum of 3 per year by 2050 and possibly over 180. Yes, that's 180 by 2100, due to the potential rapid melting of ice sheets in Greenland to the north and Antarctic to the south. We've already experienced some of these changes. Annual maximum daily precipitation has already increased 14% in the Northeast, while total precipitation on the top 1% of rainy days has increased by 60% compared to the first half of the 20th century. These changes are real. Climate change will have serious impacts on our ability to build and maintain rail infrastructure across the United States. Extreme temperatures will lead to rail buckling and reduced train speeds. More intense storms will lead to flooding of bridges, tunnels, and low-lying rails, in addition to damage from landslides. And increased drought will impact soil stability, which could affect track geometry and integrity. In Baltimore City, where pediatric asthma rates are double the national average and juvenile asthma rates are triple, rail infrastructure's current impacts on air quality will be worse in a warming world. Increased temperatures, drought, heat waves, and wildfires are all expected to increase emissions of ground-level ozone and PM 2.5, two of the world's major air pollutants, and significant triggers for asthma attacks. Severe warming, with a US average increase of 9 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit, would increase annual US air pollution-related deaths by approximately 25,000 in 2100, relative to 2000. These impacts are and will be disproportionately felt by communities of color, like the one you're gathered in today, where much of this infrastructure is sited and thus are more exposed and at risk. So, any project designing, building, or maintaining infrastructure in the United States today needs to plan for climate change, both in terms of the project's own environmental footprint, but also how it will be impacted by climate change and the implications for surrounding communities, the changes that are happening in our climate back here. Thank you very much for your time.
So Dr. Cantor referred to PM 2.5 and particulate matter that is generated by rail infrastructure. So during operation, all trains generate ultrafine particulate matter, or PM, also known as brake dust, rail abrasion, referred to by Amtrak as fugitive dust. So PM10, or particles with a diameter of 10 microns or less, is small enough to enter the lungs. PM 2.5, or particles with a diameter of 2.5 microns or less, is small enough to enter the bloodstream. Despite extensive research, there is currently no evidence of a threshold below which exposure to particulate matter does not cause any adverse health effects. A 2022 review of 3,427 peer-reviewed academic studies of in-train concentrations of particulate matter from 1998 to 2022 found that trains exceed the WHO standards for PM10 and PM 2.5 over 80% of the time. Amtrak's trains may meet EPA standards in ideal conditions, but once a track is laid, those conditions immediately begin to decline. Any changes in rail alignment will permanently increase the amount of rail particulate being discharged. Any and all shifts in the alignment of a railway are permanent until the track is laid. And that matters to us, and to this neighborhood, because we've inhaled a lot of particulate matter over the years. The neighborhoods along the alignment of densely populated areas and historically marginalized residents who have suffered the effects of pollution for generations. As Dr. Cantor had noted, in Baltimore, the pediatric diagnostic asthma rates are more than double the national average, it's 20% to 9%. And diagnostic rates for 9 to 12th graders is more than triple, so 33% to 9%. For asthmatics, any declination in air quality, whether it's from heat or from dispersal of rail particulate, has an immediate and outsized effect, as evidenced by the established relationship between reduced air quality and increases in emergency room admissions and hospitalizations. Asthma attacks can be triggered by any number of rail byproducts, including engine emissions like nitrogen oxide and volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. Amtrak's original planning insists on passive venting, which uses outside air to ventilate the tunnels. These models assume that the outside air is neutral. They don't calculate potential disparities in air quality, and thus they assume that managing the downwash, or the air deflected by that aerodynamic movement of trains in the tunnel, is simply a matter of dispersal. But what does venting mean when the dispersal medium itself is rated by the EPA as unhealthy? With passive venting, the tunnel will be directing concentrated blasts of smoke, particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, and VOCs directly into our elementary school. So what do we do about this? Well, the EPA has a requirement in this case. The law requires a supplement to the EIS in certain circumstances like these. Specifically, and I'm quoting from the EPA's National Environmental Policy Act, a supplement to a draft or final environmental impact statement, EIS, is required when there are significant new circumstances or information relevant to the environmental concerns that have bearing with proposed action or its impacts. Climate change, as Dr. Keondra so clearly outlined for us, was identified by 15 coordinated branches of the federal government as a threat to our health, our infrastructure, and our survival. That is more than an environmental concern, it's a necessity. We need a supplement to the EIS for this project, one that takes climate change into account and plans for the ways in which extreme weather events, including relentless heat and constant flooding, will affect the stability of the rail. I raise this issue not only because it's legally required, but because our neighborhood is bearing the cost of this infrastructure in the short, medium, and the long term. For being asked to support the stability and the efficiency of the entire region, Amtrak must provide us with infrastructure that works. Trains need to be able to run in worst-case emission scenarios without harming their passengers, their employees, or causing further impact to the surrounding community. Amtrak must plan for climate change, maintain our equality, and account for environmental justice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate that. And Keondra's going to come forward and bring us into the next section, which I think is this one, emergency preparedness.
So obviously with all that, we need to be prepared for any potential emergency that might come our way in the future. And so this one is a quick one. We have been assured by you that our emergency management teams, our firefighters and our police officers work hand in hand with Amtrak to handle future emergencies. But we need more than that from you. We need to ensure that the community understands the different potential emergencies and how they should respond to them. It's not enough for our firefighters to know what could possibly happen, but each and every resident in this community needs to know as well, and needs to know how to respond to a potential emergency in the community. As we've seen in recent derailments, seconds matter, and so we would really appreciate Amtrak taking the lead and working with our local government to prepare our communities better. So we ask, if the emergency ventilation site is for emergency evacuation of your commuters, what is the protocol for neighborhood residents? How will the community be prepared for emergencies during deconstruction of buildings, construction, and the operation of the railways? We also need an emergency alert system. We have been through quite a few water emergencies in the last year, and we all find out via word of mouth, Twitter, or social media, or hopefully you have a good neighbor that will call you and let you know that you could not drink your water. That's not enough for us. We need better technologies to inform our community immediately on how to respond to those emergencies. So which technologies will you introduce to our community so that we can inform each other of an emergency? And how will the system alert be appropriate for local, state, and federal stakeholders? And Each one teach one, as they say. Call on your neighbor and let them know what you know about the B&P Tunnel Project so we can all be educated as we move forward. And we would like your support of third-party analysis of all the technical documents that Amtrak has provided. We believe that we should support experts, as you have seen today, in thinking through the best practices as we move forward to our future. So with that, again, this is the Slido. We have a couple questions we wanted to ask the audience, and you don't have to directly answer in Slido, but you can. And this, again, is a way to connect. And if you haven't already, we wonder, after this presentation and after hearing from Amtrak several times, we've had real estate meetings, we have had a multitude of different types of engagements with Amtrak. What do you still wonder about the B&P Tunnel Replacement Project? What are your concerns, if any? I also want to know, how do you see yourself advocating for yourself and your community moving into the future? What urgent steps do you think Amtrak should be taking as we move forward in partnership with them, thinking through the future of this project? And then what urgent steps should the community be taking together? And that's all. I just want to say a special thanks to Barbara Borland for not only all your work on this presentation, but also connecting us with so many experts. Thank you so much, Carson, for your work in putting this presentation together. Carson Ward, wonderful neighbor. Thank you, of course, Mark Berry, for being up here and volunteering to present today. I know it's a little unnerving. And then, of course, thank you to all the resident-run organizations in the neighborhood, Residents Against the Tunnel, who's been advocating since 2015 on this issue, Upper Utah Madison Neighborhood Association, the Mount Royal Historic District, and the Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association. If I didn't look at you, I wouldn't have stumbled. And of course, thank you for all of the volunteers of the Reservoir Hill Association and Beth on the Synagogue. Thank you so much for helping us through all our technical questions and our annoyances. I really appreciate you having us here tonight. So I think we wanted to reserve the remainder of the time for people to be able to ask questions, either if you're at home and you're using Slido, or if you're in the audience and you just want to pick up a mic. I think that the Amtrak team will help. We can help pass mics if people have specific questions. I just want to say that what the Amtrak team has communicated to me is tonight we can ask questions. They may not be able to immediately respond to those questions in this moment, so they're taking notes and will be responding to us in writing. So we are also, keeping track of the meeting, and we'll also follow up with the questions that are being asked. But I just wanted you to know that if you're waiting for an immediate response, it might not happen right now. But they have committed to responding to us in writing. Okay? So that's it. Thank you again for having us, and thank you for the opportunity to present our issues.
Floor is open for questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Julie Schweitzer. I've lived in Reservoir Hill for 4 years, and I'm just a little bit north on Utah Place of where the line will go through. I mostly wanted to encourage everyone here to ask a question and to just kind of break, that first person barrier. I was involved a little bit in some of the B&P Tunnel Organizing Reservoir Hill working group, and I think the main thing we ran into was just how many questions we all had, whether that's some of the things that the presenters brought up, which were fantastic presentations. I really appreciated, just connecting how interlinked all of these issues are. And I think that's the main thing that I have questions about, is the fact that we live in a society that does not prioritize caring for people who have been historically marginalized, and let alone the individual homeowners that all of the expenses and the costs are going to fall on us. So if we know anything about the world that we live in, we all have concerns because we know that the response is not going to prioritize our lives, take care of our homes, and that's going to fall on us. So my main questions are around, how does the engineering work in terms of making sure that these extremely old houses are not going to be impacted? And the emergency response in terms of getting updates about what happens when water pipelines break, when E. coli goes into the water again, etc. I personally am a renter, but I think we all are here with various levels of investment in this, and I just want to encourage other people to ask questions.
Hi, I'm Libby Julian, I live in the 2300 block of Utah Place. I know that we've been talking about vibration studies, especially when the streets are being renovated and all that. Where are we in that process? Is there a process? Is there something we're going to look forward to, or are we just going to talk about it? Not trying to be mean.
Hi everybody, my name is Lena and I live on the 900 block of Brooks Lane. I've lived in Reservoir Hill for 8 years and I love my community and the people here and how we rally together, and it's just a really beautiful place to live. My concerns revolve around health and safety. So what kinds of chemicals will be vented and what kinds of chemicals and things are going to be gases coming out of the ground when you break ground. Some are natural, some maybe not. Especially considering that there is an elementary school immediately next to this venting site. It's very concerning. I do not have children yet, but I probably will in the future, and that is the school that I intend on sending my children to. And it's really worrisome that that could be happening to their health, especially with what we talked about in this presentation today. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Holly, and I live in Reservoir Hill. I live in an apartment building, and I was interactive with St. Francis Neighborhood Community Center, volunteering over there and going to some of the community meetings. And we also was talking about the building of the train. And now my question is also about like water and smoke and like they said about the asthma and stuff. Is anybody thinking about the children and all of that? And we talk about ventilation. Well, the school needs ventilation. So if stuff, you know, start to rise up and things start to happen, do you have stuff in place for when things start to unravel? You know, an emergency place that needs to happen, thinking about children and the sound. Is there going to be a sound, you know, as it's running? Is it cut noise? You know, is it going to be quiet, or are people going to hear it, you know, running? Is it going to run through the night, like things like that, and what's in place for it?
Hi, my name is Pamela Patterson. I've been in Reservoir Hill for the past 30-something years, and a homeowner on Brookfield and White Rock. Okay, I'm sorry. And a homeowner on Brookfield and White Rock. We also have guests here from Sandtown, Winchester, who's been offered for Amtrak to buy his land or something, and there's somebody else in the community that got a letter about eminent domain. So this project, our first meeting, if I got it right, was at Mount Road 2014. Some of the people that was part of the beginning of this, to be clear, it is a bully tactic. It's still bullying. They want us to be scared. But the new vocabulary word that's involved in the presentations was excellent, is the environmental justice. As far as our children, they do not care about none of the Baltimore City area, starting with Reservoir Hill, that is going to be the starting point all the way up because of the disparities in our colors, all of us. those that are mixed or whatever, however you want to say it. So the bullies are still here, but I'm glad to see the new faces and the young faces and the intelligent groups that are here now as well. But the environmental change has a good impact, and it will affect things. So the tunnel people and those in government, you guys need to redo this whole thing over, as we've been saying from 2014. It was presented early on another way to go around this community. This was not the first community checked out. It was another community. But anyway, thank you for your time.
So maybe I'll take a moment to ask a question if it's okay, as well, and then I'll pass to other people on. So I'm Rabbi Daniel Berg. I'm the senior rabbi here at Bethlehem Synagogue. So welcome, everybody. Glad to have you with us. I feel like we've got a nice crowd. I'm kind of tempted to preach a sermon, but I won't do that. So I have a couple of questions. I've also been sort of involved in this kind of from day one and asking elected officials about it, often getting kind of insufficient answers both from them and then from Amtrak. Certain things have been kind of answered to my satisfaction, other things kind of are just lingering out there. So the things that are still staying with me at this moment are, I still wonder about kind of the relationship between Amtrak and potentially freight. I know Amtrak doesn't want freight coming through. My understanding is that the redesign of the project would preclude CSX or freight rail to be using this particular tunnel, but I still want like assurances of that. Some of the stuff, the demands to put things in writing, I thought were really important. I know the tunnel project was reduced from 4 to 2. I know originally it was intended to be double stack. My understanding is there still could be 2 additional tunnels by the initial environmental study. What would prevent that from happening? It was redesigned with the vent shaft to be different because it's no longer diesel engines and electric, but what happens if in the future they want to put diesel, they want to expand the vent shaft? So like those are the kinds of things. I think the horizon thinking of 100 years, 150 years really helps to think like what could happen when there are different bureaucrats who are part of the conversation and maybe not taking into account the good intentions of the folks who were making assurances to the community. So those are some of my questions. The other question that's outstanding for me, there's still some messaging out there among especially people who are really upset about this project, about oil trains. Is that even something we should be talking about anymore? Is that even still a possibility, bringing fracked oil through any populated area, including anywhere in Baltimore, frankly, is a huge problem. If that is a problem, if it's not a problem, we need to be really clear about that. And the last question that I have is about the full trajectory of the tunnel. So I'm glad that you mentioned Sandtown. We're having conversations here in Reservoir Hill. I live in Reservoir Hill across the street at Utah Place, love our community, but also, as was said, I think very importantly, the whole trajectory of this tunnel kind of bypasses white neighborhoods and goes through predominantly black neighborhoods. Any assurances that are made to Reservoir Hill, I certainly would expect are going to be made to Sandtown, Winchester, and Edmondson Village, and Penn North, and any of the other communities that are being affected by this project. It's really important, and I just kind of say this also to my Reservoir Hill neighbors, that like this is not a NIMBY approach to this stuff. Like we're all in this together. We should be concerned about all neighborhoods in West Baltimore and in Baltimore. And I would hate for us to be kind of pitting against each other as if one neighborhood is more important than another. We're all important, and we all have to be aware of some of the structural and historical disparities and biases that are baked into a lot of what happens in this town.
Hi, my name is Soledad Salame. I live here since 1987, and I'm an artist, my husband is an artist, and for us, it's not possible to move because of this project, because I need high ceilings, I teach in my studio, I have MICA students coming, professors coming, and I'm very worried about the structural damage that this drain can cause to all of us. I had a problem happen in my house when they were paving the outside and the vibrations broke my gas line. And my house was full of gas, and if I wouldn't have noticed, it could have exploded and it would have caused a terrible damage to everybody in the neighborhood. So I want assurances from the B&P Tunnel people and Amtrak to answer our questions, because I feel frustrated that every time I come to one of these meetings, I come out with no answers to any of our questions, and they're not being responsible about our concerns. And I think it's time for them, if they want to start this project, to consider a different route, a new environmental impact assessment, because it's obsolete. It was obsolete after 5 years, and they haven't done that. And second, I want assurances of what would happen to all of us if damage is caused. Because we all here have worked really hard to maintain these houses. They're like the money pit, because they're so big. We have worked years and years and years to get where we are. So we need them to be responsible to us and to everybody here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Leah Marino. I live on the 2200 block of Linden Avenue. I've been there for 10 years. My question is, if there was a collision event or an explosion or something like that in the tunnel, what would it feel like on the surface? That's it.
My name is James Boykins and I'm from Sandtown. I'm having a problem with this project as it stands right now, solely because I've been coming to some of the meetings, and y'all were invited to the meeting they had down in Sandtown. I received no information pertaining to this meeting. And is anybody else in here from Sandtown? That's my point. We weren't made aware that this meeting was even taking place. I spoke to someone at Amtrak yesterday, and they informed me. I asked her, when was the next meeting? And she told me today. And I come here today, but when I spoke with her, she said that they were in the process of making settlement offers on your property. They just wanted to sell rights. And I asked her again, and she said, well, look at it this way, it could just be free money. It's not free money, because even with the property, once you're selling the land, it's no longer in fee. That's first. So if you were to sell your house, you're going to be getting less anyway. So any money that they give you is not a benefit one way or the other. It's unfortunate that Sandtown is not being allowed to participate in this process. I noticed that at the Sandtown meeting, more Reservoir Hill people were there than Sandtown. And I asked around in the neighborhood, and I teach the martial arts in St. Louis. So I asked around in the neighborhood, most people don't even know this is going on. I knew it was going on solely because in front of my house, they put a machine there, they were drilling. But they said this was back in March of last year. And they said that they haven't started the project. Well, you have. Because I know you were putting in markers because I'm a good contractor. They were putting in markers so they know which way they're going. But it's unfortunate that they're not allowing these people, the other people in Sandtown, to participate. And all of us are zone 17. It's like they're separating us from each other. At the last meeting, the lady said, well, we're not talking to groups. Well, that's to keep you divided. I don't have much more to say. I'm getting a little upset.
So I'm just clarifying. We're here and asking questions, but there's no answers going to be given tonight. There's representatives from Amtrak here, yes? Is that what's happening? Is this how these meetings go? Because the last meeting I attended virtually, Amtrak didn't even show up. That's my first question, which I guess is not gonna get an answer right now. Maybe I'll come into it at some point. So my name is Tamara Harris-Coleman. I live on Linden. Been living in Reservoir Hill since 2016 on Mount Royal. Moved from Oakland, California, and I feel like this is the most classic example of environmental racism that I've ever seen. You're going to put high-speed trains going under a historically black neighborhood and have events pointed at an elementary school. I don't understand. Help me understand that. That's my first question. Secondly, I just listened to a story about the building of the African American Museum in DC, and they spent an extra $20 million to, once they started digging, there's a river. I mean, Baltimore, Washington DC swamp, which is a swampland. So what are the plans for protecting against that? I just feel like none of it makes sense, and that we continue, as this woman said earlier, to not get any answers.
We have asked over and over again for the geologist report because we have sand and brick in our basement, like Barbara said, and we haven't gotten any answer to that. It's those geology reports that you have on the website, they're old. They should be assessed again because we need to know, because from climate change, from vibrations and everything, the bricks are not the same that they were 10 or 15 years ago. So we need that information. We need that urgently, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
So I understand in 2010, there was a Northeast Corridor Infrastructure Master Plan document released. And in that document, it says there's a broad agreement among policymakers that highways cannot continue to absorb all the expected growth in freight movement over the next 20 years. And improved freight rail must be part of the solution and carry more of these goods. Then, I know now that there is an NEC, Northeast Corridor Future Program, and in that program, a goal is to identify opportunities for synergy in rail infrastructure investments that benefit passenger and freight rail service. And so, I just would like clarification if the B&P Tunnel Program is a related project to the Northeast Corridor Infrastructure Master Plan, and also to the Northeast Corridor Future Program. And also, as it relates to that, I do understand that the ventilation facility, the size is dictated by the size of fire to be controlled by it. And so I understand when you were doing the initial planning, it was for 4 tunnels and to handle that capacity. But the size of the ventilation facility has not changed, although there are now 2 tunnels. So I would like to understand why the ventilation facility size remains.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who came, and our presentations Keondra and I have, we will share these with everyone with the BPWG working group, with any neighborhood association that would like to see them, any person who wants to email us. We are all in this together. I really appreciated our neighbor from Sandtown pointing out that they're not being notified. And Keondra and I have asked the Amtrak team so many times, send mail, put up signs. Please just reach out to people because we really need you to do that. We're not the government, we're not a company, we're just people. And as much as we talk to each other, we really need you to help us communicate. You have to communicate with every neighborhood that's on this alignment.
And everything that we said tonight, we will share with anyone who asks for it, but we will share it with the Amtrak team and with anyone who cares to ask. So thank you.
We have a hand in the back here.
Thanks. Yeah, likewise, I just wanted to stress that I think a big problem we have is that we know Amtrak's response. Like, everyone here, and I'm new to this, but I think so many people have talked about how we never get answers from Amtrak, and just like one person said tonight, or a few people have said that, yeah, we're not getting answers again. And so, and I think the survey that they gave us at the door, it speaks to the bullshit of it all too, because all we get to say is what the hell we want some outside looking thing to look like, and without any question of does this community actually want this ventilation system next to an elementary school? The answer is no. We've said that time and time again. And people have been here for, since 2014 have been saying that. So I think the problem for us is that we have to organize. And I'm saying this to the people in this room, is that we have to organize, and that way we can coordinate with people in Sandtown. We should fill this room next time we get a meeting together. And this meeting only happened because people like Keondra and the other organizers that put this on pushed for it. And so, and I think we all commend you for doing that, and it can't remain just the people in this room. So I hope that everyone here can get in touch with somebody to continue to be organizing, and to know that we've heard Amtrak's answers, and they are not going to collaborate, or it's not going to go along with what we want from this.
It's my understanding that any Amtrak track has to allow freight to travel on it by federal law. It's also my understanding that although this tunnel is going to be electric, that electric engines can and do pull freight through cities. I am wondering if this is federal law and Amtrak cannot prevent freight from traveling on those lines, what is to prevent a train pulling oil or something coming on those tracks during the night? And this is something that we've asked, and so far I haven't heard a clear answer to it. And then, of course, later, I thank you for asking the question about the capacity of the tunnel vent system, because I too wondered why those underground caverns and everything did not change when we're not evacuating exhaust. But imagine what is going to happen if we cannot prevent hazardous freight from going under there, and something happens in those tunnels. And so far, nobody has really said, no, we absolutely are preventing freight from coming through those tunnels. And I understand that as federal law. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, I've wasted time, but we've talked about this at other meetings, and I believe that that is the case. Thank you.
Jacob Joseph, I'm on Mount Royal Terrace, a couple blocks from where the tunnel will be. My main question, I think, is that this is a multi-million-dollar investment in our neighborhood, and it's not clear that it's a net positive for us. It seems like we're at a net negative, even though it's a huge multi-year project. And we're the caretakers of the project. Like, we're the ones that are going to live with it, our descendants are going to live with it for the next 150 years. And we're going to call you when we see smoke, we're going to let you know if there's vibrations, we're going to let you know if there's a problem in the tunnel and help you take care of it. So how are you going to help us ensure that this is a net positive for the neighborhood? And how are you going to help us ensure that it's a good long-term investment for us and for you.
Hi, my name is Brandy Savarese. I live in the historic Monroe Terrace part of the neighborhood. And I think you've been hearing many people say, we're not getting answers, we're not getting answers. And I know that Amtrak thinks they're giving us answers. I know that the public information officer thinks that they're giving us answers. We are engaged, we are educated, we talk to each other, we understand data. As you can see from our presentation, we know what we're dealing with. So the answers that we want are not pats on the head that say, don't worry, we're engineers, it will be fine. We want the data, we want the studies, we want to have meaningful conversations with you about the impacts of this tunnel. We understand where we are in the process. Many of us are still fighting for a change in alignment. If we cannot change the alignment, we truly want to know what are the impacts of this construction and of this operation. Speak to us as if we deserve to know the information that you all keep on your plans and in your databases and in your slacks, okay? That's what we need when we say we want answers. We don't want to be patted on the head and reassured by technocrats who don't treat us with the respect that we deserve.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ward. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that, for the record, Amtrak is supposed to ensure that all of these meetings that are held, all of their public outreach must be meaningful. And today, like every other Amtrak meeting, is not meaningful. There is no real engagement, and they really don't intend to engage with us. They have their plan in mind, and they intend to move forward. Last month, they sent a notification out that they were going to begin demolition of the former medical facility and the commercial areas during the time the Section 106 review is supposedly ongoing. And Section 106 is federal regulation, which requires them, if you're dealing with historic properties, to take certain steps to mitigate or alleviate any adverse activity with respect to these historic properties. And Amtrak has already said, for the record, we're going to demolish this. And that's going to be the site of the intermediate emergency ventilation facility. So they've already made it clear what they're going to do or what they intend to do. And community engagement is not on the list, okay? They're not here to answer questions. They've not been forthcoming. They've not been transparent. And we need to acknowledge that and move forward accordingly, because I don't care how many meetings they hold. It is very clear they don't even intend to follow the law. They just don't. And they're a quasi-federal agency, and they're required to follow their own rules. And we need to hold their feet to the fire. And yes, we can still attend these meetings, but we need to really address that no matter what we ask them, they're always going to be less than transparent.
We have a question in the Slido, and the question is, what exactly is going to use this tunnel? Is it MARC? Is it CSX? So the theme that I'm seeing here is that there's not a lot of accountability coming from over that side of the room. And so what I'd like to know, all these questions that are being presented, when will you be answering them, and how will you be answering them? Because I'd like to have my email inbox open, and I'd like to see the answers, because it sounds like there haven't been any. So if at the very least this evening, I know you're not answering all these questions in detail, but some communication as to when you're answering them.
That was my question.
Well, let's hear an answer about that, yeah. Yeah, I think where the wrong people are holding the microphone.
So, thank you all very much. What I did say was that I wanted to make sure everyone kind of got all of their questions out, and then I was going to recap what I said at the beginning. So I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask any questions that they have. Okay. So, thank you all very much.
Not answering the question.
Okay, so another question.
I'm coming to you.
So I'm thinking a lot about all the questions regarding Amtrak not answering our questions, and it really brings me back to train 188 that derailed in 2015, that killed 8 passengers. And in an account, someone said that, all right, give me 1 second. They said the person at Amtrak was cheerful, but she could answer no questions about what the timing and next steps would be. And they said that Amtrak completely screwed up, and in my view, our national train company failed almost every single test. And so, as Amtrak doesn't answer our questions this evening, I want to go back to the emergency preparedness plan and think about, will Amtrak answer our questions in the case of an emergency?
Okay, are we ready to hear from Odessa?
Thank you again, Rabbi Berg, for hosting us this evening. And I appreciate everyone for coming out this evening, asking a lot of questions. I certainly can. No problem. I appreciate everyone for coming this evening and asking any questions that you asked. We agreed up front, and I don't know that everybody's as aware, because people came in at varying times this evening, that it was really important, and we were asked very specifically to come to this community and listen. That in a lot of times we've come to meetings and we've come and presented information and not left open space for the community to provide us information. So one of the things we agreed to up front was that we would come, I would bring subject matter experts to hear questions on the varying topics that you guys have raised over the last couple of months. And so that is what I committed to doing. That's who we brought with us this evening. All of our experts have been taking notes with the intention, and the briefing that I gave them before today's meeting was, please be sure to kind of take notes on the subject areas that you are an expert in, so that we can have clear questions and clear answers developed. I didn't want us to be in the situation where we are listening for the sake of responding immediately. Rather, we wanted to listen and listen with intention. So that was kind of my directive from Luigi in talking to Ms. Borland and Ms. Prier. So it wasn't that we came here just to not answer, it was that we came here to listen, and that was really done with deliberation. Our intention is to provide written responses. I'm going to get with my team tomorrow and get some idea based on the questions they've pulled together. Everyone's going to send us their questions. I'll get a sense from them how long it will take to pull together answers, and I'm going to communicate that back to Ms. Prier and to Ms. Borland to make sure that we can say kind of what the timeline will be to get answers. 2 things that we are doing for certain, any information that we've collected, we're putting on our website. So the boards that are here, this was a starting point. We were taking advantage of the fact that we were physically in a space and could let you see them up close. We are still planning to have more conversation on it. We just wanted to take advantage of an opportunity to let people see things quickly. We're gonna be placing all of this information in terms of the responses, not only on the website, but we will send them back to Ms. Prier and Ms. Borland yes.
Would
very
you also
specifically.
send it to the listserv, anyone who signed up for communications from Amtrak?
Certainly, yeah.
Thank
Not
you.
a problem. Well, that reminds me of two things. We do have both an email list that you can send an email to us, and then we can answer your questions directly. I do want to make sure I give this kind of caveat. We've gotten questions before. It takes us a little bit of time to respond because we are sending all questions to the appropriate technical expert, and once they give us a response, then we give them back. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time, but it is not that we will not respond. It is our intention to be as responsive as we can and give as many answers as we can, as thoroughly as we can. So I am very appreciative, like I said, that you all joined us this evening. I'm gonna stick with I'm not gonna answer questions from that perspective. I don't know the answer, that was why I said, so my intention very specifically is to communicate once I know what all the questions are, then to say it's gonna take us this long to answer. I don't wanna say it's gonna take 2 days, I just don't know. I can't hear. But in fairness, that's what we were asked to, I need the defense, that is what we were asked to do, correct? No, I'm saying that is what we agreed that we were doing, correct?
That's what you said you were gonna do, and
Correct.
you have to redo it.
Right, no, but in all fairness, because what I don't want to do, this has been super helpful, and I don't want the conversation to devolve for that purpose. We said we're gonna come and listen because for us that makes sense. If we came prepared to respond, you wouldn't have time to present and us respond, right? It would take more time than we have.
So maybe what we can do is set a follow-up date for a meeting where you will be prepared to answer the question, say, in a month. I think that's very reasonable.
So two things we said we would do. One, kind of to respond to one of the requests we've heard from the community is we're setting up a series of meetings in advance so that everybody knows the dates, the times, the locations. As we set those meetings up, we'll set up an agenda so we know exactly what subjects we're going to cover at that set meeting. That's going to allow us to make sure we do get to the entire corridor. We've been here in Reservoir Hill a few times. We have got to make sure that we're committed to going through the whole corridor, so that's one of the things I've said. And in order for us to do that, so we can set up a follow-up meeting, I'm fine with setting one up. I'm not going to say it's in a month because we are committed to being in Rosemont, we're committed to being in Midtown Edmondson. I want to make sure that everybody along the corridor gets a similar opportunity to have a listening session like this one.
And we will, in solidarity with all the folks on the alignment and the other communities, are more than happy to coordinate with other communities to set a date in a month. We're happy to work with folks from Sandtown, we're in connection with people in Edmondson, the ECO organization. We're really happy to do that.
We're in conversation with those communities already to set that meeting date. So I appreciate all support.
So it will be all communities at once, or?
So what we're trying to do is make sure we're clear to answer the questions that a community has. One thing that we've kind of been criticized for is if we're having a meeting in Midtown Edmondson and we end up having all questions that are coming from Reservoir Hill, we're not answering the questions that people in Midtown Edmondson need to have answered. They're different, the questions are different. So we want to make sure we can answer the questions that are appropriate in that particular area and do the same thing here.
We all have the same basic questions that are not getting answered.
They are, the areas, the questions are different per neighborhood.
I have a suggestion, and I have a mic. Okay.
I don't know where voices.
I wanted to make sure you're talking about the fact that we would have. Oh, you're right.
Okay, I didn't know where the voice was coming from.
We would have the answers before we sit down and have a meeting.
Correct.
Not something handed to us at the door, and if we're trying to pay attention, we're not getting a chance to absorb and communicate with our neighbors, or whatever we think about that. But I agree in the back that there are some central questions to the entire thing. I mean, I brought up vibrations, I'll do that again. The geological studies, all of those things are common to the whole project. So can we just have those to start with? Those are the broader answers, because that will prepare you for all of the other meetings.
Right.
It should be the same answer everywhere.
It will be the same answer everywhere, and that is exactly why I'm saying, but I want to give our team a chance to hear the questions coming from all of the voices. So that is equally important. So we definitely captured all the questions. We want to make sure that we are letting every voice get a chance to ask the question. And when we get to Santima Winchester, when we get to Midtown Edmondson, and they say the exact same questions, then we know that it's a communal same voice. But we have not gotten that same.
I understand, but I'm just saying I think it's going to be the same questions.
Yeah, there are some very different issues because tunneling is not the same. One is very deep tunneling, one is shallow. We just want to make sure that we're clear.
Odessa, we've been asking these questions ever since you've been on board, like a lot of us that's here. There are some new faces here that don't know about you and us that have been here since you came on board. Before the record, the questions will not be answered. Like the young lady said, you work for somebody. Our position now is, as a community, yes, we gotta organize. We need a lawyer, we need it all. We don't have to take this off of you guys. You say the same thing at every meeting. And I haven't been in a meeting since 2020, early 2023. It's the same thing, same questions. How is it gonna affect the communities that are involved? Our houses, our children. You first wanted the ventilation on White Lot, where the new farm is, not the original that was built in 2000. I'm a neighbor over there, I helped put it up. We voted against you guys, so you do us a bone. Now you're gonna put it across the street with the children? That says a lot. That says, spit in your face, community. Like I said, this was the second choice back in 2014, when it was 6 people. Some that was there, and some other people that's here. I happened to run through at Mount Royal, I was late for the meeting, and you was there. Don't even try. That was something else.
Okay, so I want to make sure that our team still has a positive set of information. We've gotten feedback.
I'm sorry,
I know.
So you're not inspiring trust. What you're doing is not inspiring trust, and you're going to spend a lot of money into this big project in our neighborhood and affect us and our homes and our kids, and you're not doing anything to make them trust you. And so, like, committing to, like, I'm going to email you in a month. I'm going to do something in a month. It doesn't seem like you even have a plan for anything. Like, when you said you have all these meetings planned, like, to other neighborhoods and whatnot, what days? Like, what you should know, like, okay, I'm going to do it here, 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 and then I'll be done with those, and then I'll get back to everybody. Did you not make a plan to do that? Like, is this surprising? Like, I'm sorry, I'm angry, obviously, but, like, it just, you're not, do something to make us trust you. Like, just make one commitment and hold that commitment, do it. Like, you showed up to this meeting, so that's one, we really appreciate that. But, like, do the next step too. Like, we're not
I can only say that is exactly my intention. So I plan to say, and as I've said, if you ask me to show up, I show up, and I have. And that's what I plan to continue to do. And you asked me to bring experts, I did.
Could you introduce them to us?
Right,
Who are the experts?
So the thing that she did ask me to do was put all of our experts over here, over to the right. And so we have people here who can talk about ventilation or who understand ventilation and design.
Introduce them to us.
Yeah.
Like, this person is a ventilation expert. Like,
I think what we need to know is how we be compensated.
Well, I think that's all.
Let's just go to the nitty-gritty. We need to know how are we gonna be compensated, and I haven't heard that in any other meeting. Yeah, I heard about, I think one of the last meetings, there
actually. I do understand that the state of Maryland would favor a recurring annual fund to the community from Amtrak based on passenger usage of the B&P Tunnel program. And as a question that I would like on record, would love to get Amtrak's thoughts on that. And also it was brought to my attention that Amtrak does not yet know where they're going to get the $50 million community fund. So if there could be clarification on where exactly that money is coming from, that would be fantastic. And just for another question that I have on the record, just would love to know the exact date of the planned demolition for the ventilation facility. And I do want to note that on Tuesday, there was a Amtrak meeting in Edmondson, but the community in Reservoir Hill and other communities across West Baltimore did not receive notification, and it's divisive. So if we could, as West Baltimore, as a whole community, could get notification on all the meetings across neighborhoods, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
As you said, you were leaving it. Yeah, so I appreciate everyone's time again. We will continue to follow up and work with the community to answer questions we have.
One second. Can we have this meeting? Thank you. I know you don't have a mic, but you can hear me. So please introduce us. Who's the expert from your team? That was not ever introduced.
As a reminder, the QR code, it will lead you to a platform where if you have additional questions, you can still collect those